Mr. Rainville, welcome. You have our full attention.
Thank you. It's a pretty amazing opportunity today for a child and grandchild and great-grandchild of dairy farmers to be here. I live at Morses Line, which has 3 houses and 1 border port. And we've run into a little problem. Instead of looking at need, we have an agency focusing on want. What they want to do is spend money. What they need to do is leave us alone. In 1983, they identified the port at Morses Line for closure. They said the traffic volume is low. The geographical proximity to other ports, 10 miles west, 10 miles west there's one, 10 miles east there's another. There's a duplication of services. Somehow Morses Line became a critical port facility in lieu of the stimulus bill. We're a little confused. We have a traffic rate of 2.5 cars an hour. It's closed for 8 hours of every day. At midnight, the gate's put down, the sensors are turned on, and the hardworking men and women of the Border Patrol go to work. So we're trying to figure out why this agency is using eminent domain as a battering ram to work its way onto our farm. And the only conclusion that we can draw is if they don't spend the money by the 30th of September, they lose it. In testimony this morning, I heard from someone sitting, I think, at this very microphone and said, well, that's our protocol. I'm sorry, this is my parents' livelihood, and I believe that carries more weight. I believe stimulus funds should be administered in the same way that medicine is practiced. First, do no harm. Our community was not consulted. We asked for a public meeting, and we were told that the agency was reaching out to the Morses Line community, by which they meant my parents, my brothers, and I sitting around our kitchen table. A public hearing was finally held last Saturday, and I was thankful tar and feathers were nowhere in the room, because had they been available, 18th century methods would have been applied to well-meaning people who were trying to do their jobs. But they never took the step back and asked a fundamental question: what does Morses Line need? And a facility designed in 1936 for a different time and place isn't necessarily relevant in 2010. My family asked representatives very early on, how are you justifying this project? And they said, we have the money. I have never heard that argument before. I spent 10 years planning the renovation of my farmhouse. My brother worked for 2 years to plan a 20-foot addition to our sugar house. We had a group of people who came in and told us they were going to do a 12-month feasibility study, and we found out 4 months later that they had designed and were putting to bid a $15.4 million facility. Again, the gap is there. What do they need versus what do they want? My family said clearly, this is vital cropland. Their environmental assessment said this is a vacant lot. Rather than weigh the loss against our farm, they compared all our acreage to all the acreage in Franklin County. They talk in the environmental report about the most affected businesses. They talk about the dollar store and Stairs Unlimited. Those aren't even in our community. At Saturday's public meeting, a young woman stood up and said, I don't understand your report because you drew a conclusion and then you twisted your data to get there. Retired custom officers who, because they're now collecting pensions instead of wages and have an opportunity to speak about this very project, stood up and called their own agency on the carpet and said, we know you wanted to close this in 1983. We know your moratorium report from last fall identifies precisely this type of port for closure. But the project moves on. So much so that a mere 12 days or so remain to a 60-day period in which Customs and Border Protection told my family that if we didn't sell our property voluntarily, they would take it. As someone who's taught civics for the last 16 years and explained to my students that this is a responsive government, a government that cares about rights, a government that protects property. I have had increasing difficulty trying to explain to well-meaning people who want to spend money why they should leave my family alone. We have a national register property. It's a dairy of distinction. In 1981, this Congress wrote legislation forbidding federal agencies to unnecessarily convert prime agricultural soils. But there's money to be spent, and the project moves forward. I find myself, every time I see representatives, using smaller words and shorter sentences to make the same point, and I run out of patience. And I ask this committee today to reprimand that agency. There is no public good at Morses Line. There is no reason to spend money at Morses Line when they know that a gate and sensors and the Border Patrol keep this nation safe. And to have veiled this project under economic stimulus and eminent domain and national security is reprehensible in a democratic nation. I am incredibly thankful to the Vermont congressional delegation, which asked questions consistently and got us answers and secured a public meeting just last Saturday. But I am out of patience with an agency that refused to give us the traffic count. My father asked at the first meeting, how many vehicles come through Morses Line in a year? And they told us, we'll find out and we'll get back to you. And we asked again, and we asked again. We shouldn't have had to file a Freedom of Information request to get that information. If this was a necessary project, the agency would have voluntarily given us that. And the mere fact that I'm the only person talking about this project in front of a microphone tells me this agency knows they have done wrong. They owe this committee an apology for the misuse of stimulus funds. They owe my family an apology for the manner in which they have treated us. They didn't give us the environmental report. We found out after it had been available for 8 days, and we were already 30 days into a public comment period. And just last Saturday, they walked into our town hall where local government representatives have been asked hard questions for more than 100 years, and they tried the same dog and pony show. And when their laptop crashed, taking down their presentation, explaining that this new facility would make us all safer and they had superior technology, I had to believe that karma was at work. I am out of patience with an agency that says a public need is to spend money. We accommodated a hydro line, major transmission line into the state of Vermont because it was for the public good. We accommodated reconstruction of Route 235 because it was for the public good. The public good is not the spending of stimulus monies.